Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gun barrel pressed against Julian's temple was colder than the freezing rain slicing through the alleyway, but he didn't shiver. He didn't dare. One wrong move, Omega, and I put a bullet in the kid first. The thug hissed, his breath reeking of stale tobacco and cheap synthesized alpha pheromones. Julian's knees were scraped raw against the wet asphalt, the dirty water soaking through his thin, oversized hoodie. He curled his body inward, a desperate, instinctual shield around the swollen curve of his belly, while his left hand gripped the small, trembling shoulder of the boy beside him. Leo wasn't looking at the gun. Leo was rocking back and forth, his eyes squeezed shut, fingers rapidly tapping a rhythm against his thigh. A stemming habit that intensified when the world became too loud, too bright, too violent. "Please," Julian whispered, his voice cracking not from fear for himself, but from the sheer, crushing weight of failure. "He's just a child. Take the money I have. Just let us go." "The debt isn't just money, pretty thing," the thug sneered, glancing at Julian's distended stomach. "The boss paid for a product. You ran away with the merchandise. A virgin vessel carrying a high-grade heir? You have no idea what you're worth on the black market." Julian's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. A vessel, that's all he had been to the clinic that trapped him. A pristine, untouched genetic blank slate, forcibly implanted to pay off his late parents' gambling debts. He had never known the touch of a lover, never felt the warmth of a mate's knot. Yet here he was, 6 months heavy with a stranger's child, shielding his autistic younger brother who the world believed was his son. "I won't go back," Julian snarled, a flash of feral defiance sparking in his honey-gold eyes. The thug raised the pistol, the hammer clicking back with a sound of finality. "Then you die here." Thunder cracked, or so Julian thought. But the sound wasn't from the sky. It was the wet, sickening crunch of bone meeting high-velocity metal. The thug's head snapped back, a spray of crimson mist painting the brick wall behind him. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Standing at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the blinding headlights of a sleek, armored limousine, stood a figure carved from darkness and terror. Cassian Blackwood, the Viper of the East, the Alpha Don who ruled the city's underworld with a silence more terrifying than any scream. He didn't hold a gun. He held a cane topped with silver, currently dripping with the thug's blood. He stepped into the dim light, his presence hitting Julian like a physical wave, scentless, oppressive, and dominating. He wore a bespoke 3-piece suit that cost more than Julian's entire life, his silver-gray hair slicked back, revealing a face of aristocratically sharp angles and eyes as cold as glacial ice. Cassian looked at the dead body, then at the trembling Omega on the ground. His gaze lingered on the roundness of Julian's belly, then shifted to Leo, who was now humming a low, discordant note to drown out the noise of the gunshot. "Messy," Cassian murmured, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in Julian's chest. He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the silver handle of his cane. Julian scrambled backward, pulling Leo with him. "Stay back," he gasped. Cassian tilted his head, an predator examining wounded prey. "You are Julian Vane, the runaway surrogate from the Helix Clinic." "I'm not going back to them," Julian cried out, hysteria rising. "I'll kill myself before I let them hook me up to those machines again." "The Helix Clinic is burning as we speak," Cassian said calmly, tossing the bloody handkerchief onto the corpse. "I do not tolerate incompetence, nor do I tolerate thieves who steal my genetic material." The world stopped spinning. The rain seemed to freeze in the air. Julian stared up at the man, the realization dawning on him with the weight of a collapsing building. "Yours?" Julian breathed. "I commissioned an heir," Cassian said, stepping closer, his polished shoes splashing in a puddle of rainwater and blood. "I expected a clinical procedure. I did not authorize the abduction of a street debtor, nor the barbaric conditions you were held in." However, he loomed over Julian, his shadow swallowing the small family. "You are carrying my son, and that boy beside you is shivering." Julian flinched as Cassian reached out. He expected a blow. Instead, the Alpha's large, gloved hand hovered over Leo's head. Leo stopped rocking. He looked up, his wide eyes locking onto the shiny silver wolf's head of the cane. "Stars," Leo whispered, pointing at the diamonds embedded in the cane's eyes. Cashin paused. For a second, the mask of the cold-blooded killer cracked. He looked at the boy, then at the terrified, pregnant Omega shielding him. Get in the car, Cashin commanded, turning his back on them. Before you catch your death. My heir requires a healthy host. The Blackwood estate was less a home and more a fortress. High walls topped with electrified wire, patrol dogs that looked more wolf than canine, and an interior that screamed of old money and cold isolation. Julian sat on the edge of a velvet chaise in a room larger than any apartment he'd ever lived in. He had been bathed, dressed in silk pajamas that felt like water against his skin, and fed a meal so rich his shrunken stomach struggled to hold it down. Leo was on the floor, arranging a set of antique dominoes he had found into a complex, spiraling galaxy pattern. The door opened, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Cashin entered. He had shed his suit jacket, rolling the sleeves of his white shirt to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked by faint, jagged scars. The doctor has reviewed your file, Cashin said, not sitting, but standing by the fireplace. Malnutrition. Stress markers off the charts. Anemia. You have done a poor job of protecting my investment. Julian's hands clenched into the silk of his pants. I did what I had to do to survive. I prioritized Leo. The boy is not your son, Cashin stated. It wasn't a question. He is your brother. Your parents died 3 years ago. You took the debt to pay for his therapies. He's my son in every way that matters, Julian retorted, his protective instinct overriding his fear of the alpha. And if you think I'm going to let you take this baby and toss me aside like the clinic planned, you're wrong. Cashin poured himself a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. The clinic planned to harvest the child via surgery at 7 months and dispose of the vessel to ensure no legal claims. That is why they are currently ash. He took a sip, his gray eyes piercing Julian. I operate differently. You will carry the child to term. You will remain here, under my protection. Once the child is born, you will be compensated. Handsomely. And Leo? The boy stays. He intrigues me. Julian watched Leo. The boy was usually terrified of strangers, screaming if anyone entered his personal space. But Leo was calm. He picked up a domino and held it up to Cashin. 3, Leo said. Cashin looked at the domino. Yes. 3 dots. 3 is safe, Leo declared, placing it down. Cashin's lip quirked, a microscopic shift that softened the harsh lines of his face. Why is 3 safe? Triangles, Leo muttered. Strongest shape. Structural integrity, Cashin agreed softly. He has an engineer's mind. Julian felt a lump in his throat. It was the first time anyone other than himself had looked at Leo with anything other than pity or annoyance. Why me? Julian asked, his voice trembling. Why did they choose me? Cashin turned back to him. Because you were a ghost. No record, no pack, no alpha. A virgin Omega with a compatible genetic profile. A blank slate. He walked over to Julian, stopping inches away. The scent of the alpha was clearer now, sandalwood, rain, and something metallic like gun oil. It was terrifying, yet Julian's Omega instincts whined in submission, craving the safety that scent promised. But you are not a blank slate, are you, Julian? Cashin whispered, leaning down, his hand resting on the back of the chaise, boxing Julian in. You are defiant. You bit the hand of the nurse who tried to sedate you. You escaped a high-security facility with a butter knife and a stolen keycard. You possess spirit. Julian blushed, looking away. I just wanted to be free. You are not free, Cashin said darkly. You are mine. Until that child is born, you belong to the Blackwood Syndicate. Do you understand? I understand, Julian whispered. Good. Cashin straightened up. Sleep. Tomorrow, we begin fixing the damage you've done to yourself. The weeks bled into months. The prison of the Blackwood estate became a strange, gilded sanctuary. The dynamic shifted slowly, agonizingly. Cashin was a man of rigid routines and icy distance, but the presence of the chaotic, emotional Omega and the autistic child chipped away at his armor. It started with small things. Julian would find rare, noise-canceling headphones left on Leo's bed, top of the line, perfect for blocking out storms. He would find his own meals adjusted to his cravings, spicy broths and sweet fruits that he had never asked for, but secretly desired. But the real change happened on a Tuesday night in November. Julian was in the library, trying to reach a book on a high shelf. His center of gravity was thrown off by his 8th month of pregnancy. He slipped, a gasp tearing from his throat as the ladder wobbled. He didn't hit the floor. He hit a wall of solid muscle. Cashin caught him, one arm hooking securely under Julian's knees, the other supporting his back. The impact knocked the breath out of Julian, but he was safe. Held. For a moment, neither moved. Julian could feel the rapid thud of Cashin's heart against his own chest. The alpha's scent flared, spicy and possessive, flooding Julian's senses. Careless, Cashin growled, but there was no bite in it. His grip tightened, pulling Julian closer against his chest. I wanted the poetry book, Julian stammered, his hands instinctively clutching the lapels of Cashin's shirt. Then ask, Cashin murmured, looking down. His gaze dropped to Julian's lips, then to the swell of his belly pressed between them. You carry the future of my empire. You do not climb ladders. Is that all I am? Julian asked, the hormones making him bold and teary. A carrier for your empire? Cashin's eyes darkened. He slowly lowered Julian's feet to the floor, but didn't let go. His large hand moved to cover Julian's stomach. The baby kicked, a strong, hard thump against the alpha's palm. Cashin's breath hitched. It was the first time he had touched the pregnancy directly. No, Cashin said, his voice rough. You are the only thing in this house that is warm. The admission hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Cashin leaned in, his forehead resting against Julian's. The intimacy was overwhelming. For a virgin Omega who had never been courted, never been held, the sheer proximity of a powerful alpha was intoxicating. Cashin, Julian breathed. Don't, Cashin warned, pulling back slightly. I am a monster, Julian. I kill men before breakfast. I destroy lives to keep my city in order. Do not mistake my protection for affection. Leo likes you, Julian blurted out. Cashin paused. The boy likes that I arrange his peas in a straight line. He calls you the quiet giant, Julian smiled weakly. He feels safe with you. And I think I do too. Cashin stared at him for a long moment, a war waging behind his stoic expression. Safety is an illusion. But I will burn the world down before I let the illusion shatter for you. He turned and left, leaving Julian flushed and trembling in the library. The illusion shattered 3 weeks later. Julian was heavy, exhausted, his due date mere days away. Cashin had been gone for 2 days. Business, his guards said. It happened at night. The security system was bypassed, an inside job. The betrayal came from the head of security, a man Cashin had trusted for a decade, paid off by the remnants of the Helix Syndicate and a rival mafia family, the Valentinos. Julian woke to the sound of breaking glass. Instinct screamed at him. He rolled out of bed, grabbing the taser Cashin had insisted he keep in the nightstand. He waddled as fast as he could to Leo's room. Leo, wake up, Julian hissed, shaking the boy. We have to hide. Leo groaned, covering his ears. Loud. Too loud. I know, baby, I know. Headphones on. Julian jammed the headphones over Leo's ears. Hide in the closet. Count the stars. Do not come out until you see Cashin. Only Cashin. 3 is safe, Leo whispered, scrambling into the hidden panel in the back of the closet. Julian closed the door just as the bedroom door burst open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in. Julian raised the taser, firing. The prongs hit the first man in the neck, dropping him, but the second man backhanded Julian across the face. Pain exploded in his jaw. He fell hard, curling around his stomach. Grab him. Boss wants the baby cut out tonight, the man growled. They dragged him down the grand staircase, Julian screaming, kicking, fighting with every ounce of hysterical strength he possessed. They reached the foyer, the cold night air rushing in through the smashed front doors. Get him in the van. Bang. The man holding Julian's left arm vanished. His head simply ceased to exist. Asterisk bang. Bang. Asterisk. 2 more shots, rhythmic, precise. The remaining attackers dropped. Standing in the rain, drenched in blood that wasn't his own, was Cashin. He wasn't holding a cane tonight. He was holding dual semi-automatic pistols, and his face was a mask of pure, unadulterated demon rage. Cashin, Julian screamed. More men poured from the shadows of the garden, the Valentino ambush. Cashin was outnumbered 10-1. Go back inside. Cashin roared, holstering one gun to rip a combat knife from his belt as a mercenary lunged at him. It was a massacre. Cashin moved like a blur of violence, a whirlwind of death. He was the Viper, striking faster than the eye could follow. But there were too many of them. A shot rang out, and Cashin stumbled, clutching his side. No! Julian scrambled up, ignoring the pain in his hips, the contractions that were suddenly seizing his uterus. He saw a mercenary aiming a rifle at Cashin's exposed back. Julian didn't think. He grabbed a discarded pistol from the floor, heavy, cold steel, and aimed. He had never fired a gun. He just pointed and pulled. The recoil nearly dislocated his wrist. The bullet went wide, shattering a vase, but it distracted the gunman long enough. Cashin spun around, saw the threat, and put a bullet between the man's eyes. Silence fell over the estate. The rain washed the blood down the driveway. Cashin dropped to his knees, his hand pressing against the wound in his side. Julian ran to him, or waddled, stumbling, falling to his knees beside the Alpha. You're hurt, Julian sobbed, pressing his hands over Cashin's fingers. You're bleeding. You? Shot at him. Cashin wheezed, a bloody grin spreading across his face. My Omega. Tried to kill a man. I missed, Julian cried. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Cashin rasped. He reached up, cupping Julian's face with a bloodstained hand. Are you hurt? The baby. The baby is coming, Julian gasped, clutching his stomach as a contraction ripped through him. Now? Cashin, it's coming now. Cashin's eyes widened. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand despite the bullet in his gut. He scooped Julian up into his arms, growling with effort. Then let's go meet our son. The birth was chaotic, messy, and terrifying. The estate's private medical team arrived just in time. Cashin refused to leave the room, even as the medics tried to stitch up his side. He sat by Julian's head, gripping his hand so hard his knuckles turned white. Breathe, Julian. Look at me. Focus on me, Cashin commanded, his voice the only anchor in Julian's world of pain. I can't do it. You escaped a laboratory. You faced down a gunman. You are strong, Cashin growled, leaning down to press a kiss to Julian's sweat-slicked forehead. You are the strongest creature I have ever met. When the cry finally filled the room, a high, thin wail of new life, Julian collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing with relief. The doctor cleaned the infant and handed the bundle to Cashin. The cold Alpha, the MAFIA Don, the man who had murdered a dozen men an hour ago, looked down at the tiny, squirming thing in his arms. The baby had Julian's nose and Cashin's silver hair. Tears, hot and silent, tracked through the blood dried on Cashin's face. Alexander, Cashin whispered. Alexander Julian Blackwood. He lowered the baby onto Julian's chest. Julian wrapped his arms around the child, looking up at Cashin with a love that terrified him. The door creaked open. Leo stood there, wearing his headphones, holding his dominoes. He looked at the blood on the floor, then at Cashin, then at the baby. Cashin stiffened, worried the scent of blood would trigger a meltdown. Leo walked over to the bed. He looked at the baby. He reached out and placed a single domino on the blanket. 3, Leo said softly. 3 is safe. Cashin let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He reached out, his large hand covering Julian's and the baby's, while his other hand rested on Leo's head. No, Cashin corrected gently. 4. There are 4 of us now. And 4 is a fortress. 6 months later, the nursery was painted a soft blue. The mobile above the crib was a custom-made galaxy of stars, designed by Leo. Julian stood by the window, watching the garden. The high walls were still there, but the wire was gone. The garden was full of flowers. He felt strong arms wrap around his waist from behind. Cashin buried his face in the crook of Julian's neck, inhaling deeply. He scented Julian, marking him. There was no question of virginity anymore. Julian had been thoroughly, possessively claimed, a mating bite scar proud and visible on the junction of his neck and shoulder. You're thinking too loud, Cashin rumbled against his skin. I was just thinking about the past. Julian leaned back into the warmth of his Alpha. How much I hated you. You were terrified of me. There is a difference. I love you now. Julian turned in his arms, looking up into those ice-gray eyes that had melted into liquid silver. And I worship you, Cashin replied, his voice dropping to that dangerous, seductive growl. The world knows me as the Viper. But in this house, I am just a man who tamed a wolf. I tamed you, Julian corrected with a smirk, tracing the scar on Cashin's jaw. Perhaps, Cashin kissed his palm. Perhaps we saved each other. And that is how the Viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing the cold-hearted Don melt for his family, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who bought you if he ended up saving your life? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res. 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic. Digital art. 2 men. BL, Yaoi. Man 1. Tall alpha, silver hair slicked back, sharp gray eyes, wearing bloody white dress shirt with sleeves rolled up, shoulder holster, holding a baby tenderly, expression of awe and protectiveness. Man 2. Omega, beautiful features, honey gold eyes, lying in hospital bed, sweating, exhausted but smiling, holding the baby's hand. Child. Autistic boy, wearing noise, canceling headphones, placing a domino on the bed. Background is a luxurious bedroom with medical equipment, dim warm lighting, atmosphere of emotional relief and intimacy, cinematic composition, intricate details.